Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm wondering, so before she walked in, I was wondering whether we do self-service and get ourselves on board, get ourselves introduced like it happens in the cloud. But then somebody decided to be the orchestrator for that. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone here. The discussion is all about cloud and how cloud can help micro and small and medium enterprises. We had a very interesting and I would say to some extent heated discussion before we got onto the stage. But we're going to cool that down a little bit. And if you look at our panel here right now, we have a cloud provider, we have industry standards, we have the provider behind the cloud, and then somebody here who does a lot of things including the cloud. Right? And I'm the only person sitting in the middle, sandwiched between all of them, who has been a consumer of the cloud. Right? So let me start from this side, because without the nuts and bolts, cloud doesn't happen. So Dr. Pankaj, how do you see the cloud evolving, and how do you see the cloud helping the micro, the small, the medium enterprise? And let's start with that. And what role does a SanDisk kind of an organization play in that?
Thank you, Arun. Let me correct you on one thing. I think we are all consumers of the cloud. Anybody who has 200 apps on their phone is a consumer of the cloud. So you stand corrected. I think the cloud is evolving under the demands that we are placing on it. We are all very impatient, and we are demanding a lot of information and a lot of services from computers that used to exist in our desktops and in the data centers, which are now disappearing into the cloud. And as the pervasiveness of technology expands, the principles with which we architect the infrastructure for the services that we have all come to expect from the infrastructure behind the apps on our phones is supposed to keep up. So the SLAs that we are driving simply through expectation. You know, when you go to a retailer's site and the transaction doesn't happen in the time frame you expect, you go to the next guy. Behind the scenes, such SLAs that we are driving through the dollars and rupees that we spend are causing big changes in the industry. The other thing is the consumption patterns. I think the things that we carry in our hands and in our palms are getting smaller, and the technology is disappearing. It reappears as virtualized desktops or a different service breakage behind the cloud. So it's driving scale. So everybody who is in business, right, and coming back to the topic about MSMEs here, if you are offering a business these days and you are not able to information mediate between you and the consumer, you are not able to reach an informed consumer. And that means missing out on a huge amount of the market. Even if you are making chole bhature, if people can be pointed to your site through a service that recommends the best place to eat chole bhature, you are going to get business more than the next guy who can't do the same thing. Okay? Because he's still reliant on old ways, word of mouth and such things. So the cloud brings scale of consumption and scale of providing. And the principles that the cloud is therefore driving are also related to scale, right? Scale out is one principle. Virtualization, which drives economies of scale, is another principle. For the people who are managing this infrastructure that is scaled out and virtualized, they can't keep throwing people the same way we used to throw people at managing servers. I don't know, maybe I'm going to give you my age. If I tell you in the early days when we all used to have VAXs, when you bought a computer from VAX back, it came with a system administrator. Every computer came with an administrator. Okay? If we ran cloud and thousands of servers in India, or what I see outside India, cloud means hundreds of thousands to tens of millions of servers. If we ran servers that way, we would all be dead by now. Okay? So automation is a key piece. And then for those of you who are CIOs or IT, tasked with managing IT for MSMEs, the key consideration for you is, what does this do for me? Okay? So the cloud, from your perspective, embracing cloud technologies is about getting prepared to scale your revenue, scale your business for growth by embracing the principles of cloud architecture without having to do it yourself. So various providers and advisors are in this panel, and I should shut up and give them a chance to say something. But thank you for the opportunity to speak first, Arun.
Thank you. So I suddenly feel young after he talked about administrators coming with wax machines. I don't think I was born that time. But let me...
I did some COBOL programming on banks.
Excellent. We'll come back to you on that. Vamsi, you represent a very, very large organization, and I was surprised to know that you do have a lot of SMSE customers as a part of your ecosystem. What he talked about in terms of scale up and scale out, and probably being present in a world where people can reach out to you, yeah, that's reality. But do really the MSMEs start looking at scale up and scale out when they start up? Or what are the kind of different things they're looking at when they take a decision, okay, I won't buy my servers from IBM, but probably I will go on a cloud with IBM?
Great, thanks. So firstly, commenting on the fact that IBM serving MSME, like how cloud sort of democratizes the IT use, it also gives us a great ability to go and serve the smallest to the smallest customer too. So going back to your question, Arun, I think scale up, scale out, there are certain set of customers. If you look at the SMB segment, the tech companies, the e-commerce companies which are living and dying by the internet probably have a design of scale up and scale out. But if you look at the rest of the breadth of the companies, they are basically looking at 3 or 4 options. Right? The financial aspect and packing, capex to opex transformation, who is the cheapest or who is the best, etc. But they are only worried about 2 or 3 things. One, do I have the wherewithal to buy, manage infrastructure in-house? Am I able to retain talent who can be hired to basically manage that? Second, is there a way I can upgrade it, or I can sort of buy new stuff without being worried about the amount of money I put in, etc. And third, if you look beyond the iron, beyond the infrastructure, they're also looking, are there better apps which are available as SaaS as compared to me trying to buy a traditional application, put it on infrastructure and go to market. So I have small companies who come with ERP requests, right? 50 user ERP, I want to put it up. I think the process is needed, but do you have a wherewithal to hire a basis guy or someone to come and sit here and do it, or a system admin? Probably not. Email and popular CRM, SaaS applications are there, but the crux is, I think, a lot of MSME consumption of cloud is powered by infrastructure providers, but consumed at their end as an application, a set of applications with either ISVs are providing or they're building themselves.
I think that's interesting and useful. Raj, you represent a new generation company which is building the cloud. Now, many, many years back when everyone was talking cloud, I used to wonder, what is a cloud? Infrastructure, platform, application. Somebody came up with everything on tap. And then when I was helping one of my companies looking at some of those options, I realized it's not going to be that easy to get existing organization to move. But I guess today reality has changed a lot. Do you see a lot of micro and small and medium enterprises coming to you and asking you for models which work differently today from what was possible in the past? Because one of the things I realized, while you can easily buy a part of the cloud services, the moment you start talking applications, there are not too many players in the Indian market. And when you start looking at dollar pricing from the outside, it suddenly doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty loaded question, but okay, I think...
I can ask all the difficult questions.
Yeah. So the way we see most of these smaller companies, I can give you some examples to start with. I think the smallest customer we serve is Sona Xerox in Ahmedabad. This guy is a photocopying company. He actually photocopies and also scans documents for customers and puts it in the cloud. This is the smallest customer I remember I'm serving. Apart from that, we just had a discussion, and I was giving an example of Patel Woods in Delhi, where we are able to, like, this customer actually decided that it should go for SAP, and he would have invested in close to about 70 lakh rupees worth of hardware. We told this customer, don't go invest in that hardware, hire manpower to manage it, run it 24/7, and then what would you buy it for? Would you buy it for this year, next year, or the year later? Don't do all that. Give us 55,000 rupees. We'll do all that layer for you. So what the promoter looked at this whole proposition was that he thought if he could keep 70 lakh rupees in a fixed deposit, he gives interest to us, I think he's going to get all the services that he asked for. And that's the power of cloud that MSMEs can leverage. But as Arun was mentioning, there are not too many applications that you can leverage. I think at the bare minimum, what customers want to start is not go and invest in infrastructure. Today, you have technologies, across all the solutions that we provide, you can build an enterprise without actually buying IT infrastructure. So if you can build an enterprise without IT infrastructure, just use BYOD, let us say, for the starters. So the employees bring their own devices because all of them have their own devices. You can actually build and run an enterprise. But on the application layer, it is the enterprise still has to choose from applications which are traditional. Like most common application you would find is Tally. Today Tally is not cloud enabled, but does it run on cloud? Yes, it does. So instead of buying a physical server to run Tally, you put it on a virtual server. So most of the MSMEs are starting at this layer. As I think more applications become available, like Office 360 is being very well utilized across MSMEs. So I think as applications will be available, it will get consumed by the MSMEs. But this is an age where you kind of idea to action is like 90 days in most companies. So there is a lot of things that are changing. It is very, very rapid change. So sometimes you want to implement certain ideas, maybe cloud can help greatly there. The most important thing is you can also retract. I think we always talk about scale out, but I think the elasticity is what is cloud that brings in. So if an enterprise, if an MSME sees a small opportunity, let's say he talked about the Chole Bhature wala, right? So this guy, if he's got an event coming up in some place, can he scale? Today I don't know whether he can scale. But what cloud can help a customer, a small enterprise, is that take advantage of opportunities that are there. It could be something that's happening in their own city. It could be, and it's a small hotel, there's a strong influx of people because of an event. So cloud enables them to take that burst in their stride and also shrink back to, business as usual. So these are the advantages that we see that people can immediately take advantage of.
I think that's a very good thought in terms of being able to scale up as well as scale back if required. Few years back, I had this discussion with one of the cloud providers, and he said, yes, you can scale up in 24 hours, but scale back takes 30 days. Okay, so conditions apply to most kind of things. I'm not sure that would apply to your organization, but I'm talking a few years back when cloud models were still evolving. Probably today things have got a lot better.
So it's always about what customer wants.
Absolutely.
So that's number one. I think, it is very, very critical that it is kind of on tap rather than, it is amortized and financially packaged to deliver certain things. One small thing around this is that it's not just about scalability and elasticity, right? This is an age where people start using applications without actually being taught. I think all our effort, like even what we are working on in terms of interface and all, is trying to make people use it very, very easily. You shouldn't be, worried about how to configure it and all that stuff. It should be like very quick. Because I see my young kids, using different apps pretty easily. Nowadays, I also started using that. So I think it's an age where you make it very easy for the customers to
Intuitive.
adopt.
Intuitive.
I think if you don't have that elasticity and stepping back, it will be a hindrance for customers to come in.
So Reena, one of the discussions I used to have with many companies, how do I switch between clouds? I don't like one cloud provider, I want to move to another. And the challenge used to be, probably you can, but it comes with a huge amount of baggage, which is difficult to manage. And it is more so when you're moving app to app versus probably moving infrastructure. Have you seen anything which is kind of changing this going forward?
So I think if you look at, just to set a preamble to how I'm going to answer this, if you look at the small and medium enterprises, right, and I think if somebody is a small enterprise and they're looking at setting up IT quickly, right, to enable their business, I think the first concern should be to look at cloud as an option. So that's a given, right? I think that's the simplest part of it. But if it's a business which is likely to grow over a period of time, then the scale out, the scalability of the business and hence the scalability of the solutions that they select becomes important. As a part of that, if there is a decision that what was working today is not relevant tomorrow, as happens very often with businesses that scale up fast, then it's important to consider what migration would entail, right? And today, if you are deeply embedded into one cloud platform service provider, and you're using all their APIs, and you're part of that ecosystem, then moving to another cloud service provider is not simple. It's not impossible, but it's not simple. It needs to be planned like an IT project. Now, is there a solution for all of this today? Something that solves the problems just like that? No. There is an attempt that is happening by various standard bodies, which is actually a group of standard bodies are nothing but industry organizations grouping together to solve the problems of the end consumer. So there is an attempt happening to create standards at every stage, every level of the cloud, whether it's infrastructure as a service, management of that infrastructure, how management can happen seamlessly across different platforms. I represent SNIA, Storage Networking Industry Association, and SNIA has a CDMI standard, which is the Cloud Data Management Interface Standard, which enables that at the the data management layer. It sort of makes that a little more seamless as you transition from one cloud to the other. Now, some of that is not so much relevant to the end consumers as it is relevant to the guys who are sitting out here, because that's the problem that they try to solve for you. At the app layer, there is a lot of API exchange that is happening today. There is a need for more standardization is what I would say.
Sure. So I guess as standards evolve, things should get better for customers as well as for the providers, because for a provider like him, if everyone is offering a similar kind of a standard, then it is easy for him to create an interoperable and an extendable cloud offering versus creating multiple flavors and then deciding which customer goes to which kind of an offering. Now, you've been in a market which is probably way ahead of the curve right now in terms of adoption of these kind of things versus what we are seeing in India. India is probably a little behind in terms of the evolution right now. If you have to say what are the top two things Indian enterprises and Indian small enterprises should be watching out for, what would that be?
That's a good question. I think, in India's demands and the cost structures here and the people costs in particular are very different. So the way cloud technology took off in the US, Western Europe is bound to be different from here. Just because of the relative costs of people versus infrastructure and the formality of process. Sometimes in India I have seen that even accounting and other technologies, it's not just cloud. When software automation of what we used to do by hand came, the embrace of technology was different in India for different reasons. People did not want their accounts to be visible to tax people. Okay, it was very different from how it was in US and Western Europe versus how it was in India. So sometimes, technology moves here quickly, like mobile technology was taken up fairly quickly because getting from place to place in our cities is hard. and some other technologies which involve transparency or compliance where businesses choose to go one way and the government wants to go another can be different. So how it plays out, I think there's going to be a lot of unique factors in this market that are going to be at play. The one thing that I do see is that I visited India about the same time last year. And we are a provider to the cloud providers. So companies like Facebook, Yelp, Spotify, big retailers in China are running on our infrastructure. In some cases, in a single day, $11 billion is transacted using our infrastructure by just the two of our largest Chinese customers. Okay. What I saw during the course of last year is that a phenomenon like that started to happen in India. I'm sure around the Dussehra Day and other days you experience some of that phenomenon. It's not at the same scale. What I see is that if my definition of what my large customer looks like globally, I see customers who have 2,000 MySQL servers in 200,000 or 400,000 overall server deployment, or a large customer who has many data centers containing more than 10 million servers. Okay. I don't see that in India yet. I see customers who are starting to have 1,000 plus servers. So I think maturity of owning IT at scale is growing. And the unique requirements of Indian cloud provider are very different. Sulfur content in the air, quality of thermal and electrical issues such as ground levels, okay? Supply issues. So those, electrical supply issues, just professionalism in managing infrastructure. So the phenomenon that showed up as, the kind of thing that caused ServiceNow and similar organizations to form in the US, where DevOps competency was completely sucked up by the likes of Facebook and Google. And so when US enterprises wanted to move to OpenStack or scale out or any of these principles, they suddenly found themselves short of resources. I see, due to very different reasons, the same phenomenon happening in India. Because technology ownership was not professional and very people intensive, as growth hit us, we can't do things the same way we used to. And so when automation is kicking in, that competency is concentrated in a few places like NxtGen data centers. So for us, when I survey the Indian market and I say what is happening to my customer, which is the cloud provider, I'm saying that they are starting to do the work that their customers want to do, but it seems early in that stage of adoption. But SanDisk as a company, we play in this ecosystem all the way from devices and wearables which are driving the cloud, all the way to content delivery networks which facilitate transcoding and distribution of video, all the way to services both like NetSuite and direct services that you use like LinkedIn and Dropbox and Facebook, as well as infrastructure as a service. And we cater to this using variety of products like SATA drives for IA, infrastructure as a service, SAS drives mainly for enterprise storage. Our PCI products are mainly used in hyperscale accounts like Facebook, and so on. So we see the market in India just about starting to mature. Let me add one more quick point, which is the importance of Government of India as a cloud customer. So I think under Prime Minister Modi's initiatives, we see new levels of investment and commitment to a new level of investment in IT. And behind that, we are actually starting to see some of that come through. So that's very exciting as a provider of providers from our point of view. I don't know whether industry and NxtGen data centers will go first, or TCS infrastructure team will hit those levels first, or Government of India will. But we are watching this to see who grows fastest and gets there soonest, and always ready to supply them.
Sure. So Vamsi, if I were to start an enterprise today and I want to service my customers on their mobile devices, the obvious answer would be get started on the cloud. Having said that, on the cloud, I can buy infrastructure, I can buy platform. I have to build the app. Where do I get started? Which cloud provider? How do I take that decision?
Easy answer is IBM. That was easy, sorry. So I think 3-4 things, right? One, as you said, the consumption layer at which different people want to go after. Someone looking up for an app goes for SaaS, or someone who wants to build an app will go for PaaS and IaaS. 2 or 3, I don't want to go into the, sort of nitty-gritties of the lowest standards, but one, I always talk about today's MSMEs or tomorrow's enterprises, and they don't necessarily have local ambitions, but India is also about global ambitions, right? So you look for a provider who is able to help you grow here and help you expand across. The second, the choice of options, it's just not about interoperability, but it's also choice of options you have in terms of what type of infrastructure can you acquire, what type of application can you acquire, or what type of as a service can you acquire from that. Last but not the least, I think we touched upon is the transparency of what you're signing up for. The fact that cloud is a great tool for you to buy the smallest element and the largest one too, the demands are not changing. The customer who is paying me $28 per month for a VM is still going to ask me the same set of availability, security, how is my data going to come back to me, etc. And ability for you to read through and get that confirmation, because the fact that cloud allows you to scale down, and not in a month but in a day or whatever, doesn't necessarily take away the responsibility of ensuring that the provider is giving you back what you want when you want, and at least showing you where it is and how he or she is managing it. What are the global certificates, a SOC 2 compliant or a PCI compliant sort of a thing, so that there's a certain hygiene level which a provider is managing to ensure that your data and your DevOps, what you want to call, is taken care of.
So I'm going to take you on a very different track now. Many years back, my cloud provider filed for Chapter 11 and said in 30 days we are going to shut down our data center. What are you going to do for your business? And it took us a very different stance to recover the service and start operating on our own, but those 30 days probably were the times where my blood pressure was double of what it normally is. How do enterprises ensure that, or even small customers? So as an enterprise, I could probably do some arm twisting, but for a small and medium enterprise, what kind of recourse they can take in doing these kind of things? Well, even a cloud provider decides that from tomorrow my model is going to be different, or I'm not going to stop doing this and probably go and sell chola bhatura. What is going to happen then?
Yeah, it's a very important question. Large enterprises go and buy IBM. Yeah. But most small enterprises cannot. But I think when you're providing infrastructure, whether it is even the application infrastructure, it's very important that you go after a trustworthy, transparent service provider. This business itself is like a plan. Like when I did my brief to the architects who were building our data center, I told them that this is the strong room and this would be the most valuable asset in this country in the years to come. So it needs to have those kind of characteristics. And the same thing applies to the business as well. So I think if you're taking the ownership of doing this business, it is extraordinarily important that you build it on robust principles, such as you don't go after it and acquire business for the sake of scale, when you have to operate profitably. I think these are the things that you need to do to ensure that the basic hygiene of the business doesn't go down in principle. There have been, I don't know of any data center and cloud company going down. There have been certain cases where people went overboard. Like there are people who give away storage for free. So you do things like that where there is no strong commercial model behind it, can lead to a failure. So the basic principles of business should not change just because you have an opportunity, to generally acquire customers and then drive valuation. So I think so the way we are working is that we have to be profitable. It is not that, you lose money on the cake and you try to make money on the icing. I think you should make money on the cake and also on the icing. So this is a business of being trustworthy. I think, so we have to build that with our customers, I mean, just like IBM built over a period of time. So if customers trust you, I mean, you will continue to survive.
Absolutely. At this time, I would like to see questions, if any, from the audience before we move on to the concluding remarks. Any questions from the audience? Either everyone is asleep or there are no questions. We have cleared everything for them. Okay, so Reena, your organization also does a lot of work for the small and medium enterprises, and you have built services around it. How are you seeing adoption happening there? And how are you going to ensure what the other gentleman mentioned, the SME of today becoming the enterprise of tomorrow? Will they be able to scale with you, or would they need to then discard what they have set up and then start moving to other conventional systems within their enterprises?
Yeah, so I need to keep changing hats. In the previous answer, I was wearing the SNIA hat. Now I put on my TCS hat. So TCS also does work for small and medium enterprises as part of the ION solutions that we have. And we provide IT as a service for our customers, which includes managing the infrastructure, the software as a service platform, as well as managing the SLAs for them. So the whole premise of this is that when customers are looking for a little bit of scale up and they want to adhere to SLAs, they are able to leverage the best practices that we have. The same kind of best practices that we roll out for enterprise customers are the kind of best practices we are able to bring to our smaller customers. Includes stuff like ITIL compliant processes, managing change management of whatever happens in the infrastructure or in the applications that are part of that infrastructure. The scale up happens automatically because if you look at any small or medium enterprise, especially let's say a large small or a medium enterprise scaling up, as the organization scales up, I would envisage, and I'm sure you would agree, that the business processes, the business imperatives will also change on a very regular basis. That's the demand, that's the kind of flexibility that is required. If those organizations are to set up their own IT teams, and to manage those kind of change, there are huge issues. I think they would be better off coming to TCS, IBM, NxtGen, going to any of the service providers depending upon the kind of services that they are looking at. And that's the value we bring to them. I think scale up happens automatically. That's what I would say.
Excellent. So I think we are almost on time. If you have to give a 1-minute elevator pitch to micro and small company on the cloud, what would that be?
So I think I will reiterate the comments from Raj, which is cloud is a business decision. Going to the cloud is a business decision. Who the provider is, who they are buying from, what their best practices are, matters. Okay. For us, we view storage as a business in which reputation is built slowly and lost quickly. The cloud is a wrapper around us. The same thing that applies to us applies to them. So from our point of view, we are looking among the providers to see who is only asking us questions about dollars per gigabyte and who wants to know that SanDisk is the company where Facebook wrote 200 exabytes of data just in the last couple of years to support their online service and their SLA. Customers who care about that will go for certain kind of purchases, and customers who care about other kind of thing, meaning my customers are cloud providers. Some will go for cost and some will go for quality. For us, we are enablers of both, okay? But for you, you have to pick and choose. So that's my final comment.
1 minute, okay. So I think if you look at the MSME consumption model, there are 2 or 3 things which come to your mind as, you know, is the provider having a strong ecosystem where the provider can bring in app providers who can actually fulfill the type of functional requirement you need, that would be something critical to look. I think we all spoken and touched upon and agreed largely that the credibility and the transparency with which the provider is able to give you this is critical. Last but not the least, the provider's ability to help you get on and get off the cloud is also an important concern for you to look at. You know, does the provider have a credibility to move you onto cloud, move you off cloud in a way that it is manageable. So whether it's a physical machine you want to buy for an hour, or a virtual machine, or a terabyte of object storage for your backup, or an insurance of a DR on a cloud, or a SaaS application for email, etc. The rules are simple, and you look for a provider who can provide them in a larger bouquet of services.
Okay, my turn. See, what we're doing is we are serving a lot of enterprise customers fairly successfully, and we will continue to go and acquire more of them. But what we want to do is we learned a lot understanding how enterprises run their IT businesses. It is run with the premise that it can never go down. Now it is run with the premise that it is actually serving more for the same. I mean, that is, for the same amount of money you try and deliver more. So there's a lot of stuff that is happening in the enterprise IT that you can actually pick up and then implement those things for the individual. So today our effort to actually, we created a product called Clicks for the consumer. So we are actually trying to make the cloud now personal as well. So what we want to do is, on one side, build a set of a large consumer base which is consuming cloud services. On the other side, give cloud services to the enterprises. So between the two, I think we will be able to somehow create some synergy and then create a platform on which businesses can be successful because I have a large consumer base, and consumers get more services because I have a large number of business in place. That's where we want to go to.
So, I mean, if I have to summarize, you know, whatever I've spoken earlier, I will not summarize. I'm going to talk about the fact that end consumers, which is people like you, play a big role in setting the direction of the industry. And this role becomes more prominent if there is a focus of the end customer on the kind of standardization efforts that are happening in the industry. Most industry standard bodies, including SNIA, have an end consumer council, right? And the intent of that council is actually to get the views of the end consumer, saying what is more important for you? What is it that the kind of people that are sitting on this platform should be really worried about as far as your concerns are concerned? And like something which my fellow panel member Pankaj pointed out during our conversations, that you know, it's not about what is already existing. So something that works for the US, for example, may not be relevant for you in India as a medium and small enterprise. So I think there is a very strong need for end consumer to be active, understanding what is happening in the technology space, and playing an active role in defining the shape of the industry by participation in these standard bodies. Thank you.
I think that's been an excellent discussion. I'll probably leave you with a small thought. 4 months back, I started a new company. So I'm a micro enterprise. And I was wondering, how do I set up my IT infrastructure? And then I said, can I go to a web portal like an Amazon or Flipkart and buy IT service? Probably not yet. But maybe that's the future, where the small and medium enterprise will not have to search, figure out what, how, where, what. It should be as easy as that. And with that note, thank you very much.